Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Inverclyde Live-Stream. But first, a little music. Enjoy.
There once was a good time when we built all the great ships here. But that once time is our lost time now. That is our yesteryear. Sugar cane from Jamaica, put a sweet tooth in every mouth, and the cotton that once was spun here fine was gathered by black hands of the South. Factory girls, topped with scarves, made the sugar, spun the thread, and the tough men who made the great ships great were proud to call themselves red. There once was a good time when we built all the great ships here. But that once time is our lost time now. That is our yesteryear. Raw tobacco from Virginia, bonded next to ruby wine, moved by dirty puffing steam trains to factories of the line. Good old roads from Port Glasgow, cooper barrels for the whiskey trade. All the world knew that the legend claimed the best ships were always Clyde made. There once was a good time when we built all the great ships here. But that once time is our lost time now. That is our yesteryear. But that once time is our lost time now. That is our yesteryear. But that once time is our lost time now. That is our yesteryear. But that once time is our lost time now. That is our yesteryear.
So, good afternoon, and it is a beautiful afternoon out there, and I expect most of you, if not all of you, are enjoying the sun and the little bit of heat that we have today. So I am not going to take too much of your time up today because the weather is so grand, and I will be going outside myself to get a little sun. So let me begin by bringing on a copy of the party flyer. And there it is. Now, as I said last week, you may or may not get one of these through your door. We are a small but growing party, and we do not have the manpower here locally, nor do we have enormous funds to pay for such a distribution of information as yet. So you may or you may not get one of these through your doors. However, if you don't get one of these through your doors, please do not let that influence your decision about voting. If you really want actual change, then you have to change the people who you elect. Otherwise, you will get the same old, same old, same old. And on a local level, that will mean that we will be stuck with these bicycle lanes, and they will be extended, causing further chaos to the town, and the traffic and any visitors to the town will get snarled up depending on when they arrive in the town. So that's not good as far as I'm concerned. So should you give me your vote and I am elected as a member of the council, I will do everything in my power to oppose keeping these cycle lanes, and certainly I will be against any expansion of it. I don't think there is sufficient need from the general public for such a thing. I personally don't see many children out on cycles these days. I don't see many people on cycles, and the ones I do see tend to be teenagers or early 20s, and at that age they should know the highway code and follow it. Cycles are compelled to abide by the rules of the road. They are not exempt. It is not acceptable for a cyclist to arrive at a red light, get off the cycle and walk round the red light and then carry on. And that is actually an infringement of the rules of the road. And I've seen, and no doubt you have seen, many cyclists do that. It's unacceptable, that kind of behaviour. But perhaps these cyclists don't know the highway code. I don't know. But anyway, I will be opposed to keeping the cycle lanes, and I will be opposed to any extensions that are suggested. And I do hear plenty of rumours from various sources telling me that the SNP and some of the other councillors who are presently elected wish to extend this. And to me, that is just an extension of the present chaos. As far as the business about headstones in our cemeteries, it would appear from the people I speak to in the town that no one knows about this. And you won't know about it until you suffer a bereavement yourself and are in the throes of burying that person. And I've mentioned it many times before, and I'll go on mentioning it. It is completely unacceptable in a civilized society, or a society that calls themselves civilized. And we do that, ladies and gentlemen. We do like to think of ourselves as being civilized. But if you buy a headstone and you pay your stonemason to engrave it, and then you put it up on the grave, and sometime later you have cause to bury another loved one in the same grave, and you add their details onto the stone, you will quite naturally, of course, pay the stonemason to do that. But at that point, the council will then charge you £150 because you have amended the headstone. Now that is an infringement in all manner of ways. First and foremost, it's private property. You own the headstone. You contract the stonemason to put the additions that you want onto it. This has got nothing to do with the council. But they have wedge jammed themselves into it and are now charging £150 for it. Good afternoon, Alison. I must make an announcement now that Alison is here. Two of my regular viewers will not be with us today, as my good lady Laura is already lying in a bed in Inverclyde Royal in preparation for some minor surgery tomorrow morning. So she and Lorraine will not be joining us this afternoon. And as I already said, because it's such a nice afternoon, I will not be spending a great deal of time on this live stream. But I do want to mention the gravestones again, because that is such an infringement and an insult to the deceased and the family. Because you only find out about it when you're grieving. And when you're grieving, as I'm sure most people will know, you're not in your right mind. And some people will not even notice it on their bill. They'll just pay the sum total to the stonemason and not realise that they've been charged an extra £150. And that's why I bring it up, because I have encountered this twice now. It's completely unacceptable, and it has to be removed immediately. In fact, if I had my way, not only would it be removed, but anyone who has paid it over the years should be reimbursed. Whether it was the original cost, which I believe was £30, which I originally paid, but now it's £150. And you might argue, well, I don't care because I'm being cremated, or the person that I love will be cremated. That isn't the point. The point is, this is an infringement of private property. They're just wedge jamming a taxation in there. And this is not just Inverclyde, by the way, this is throughout Scotland. This is purely SNP. Purely SNP. So if no other reason you should be voting the Pensioner Party, it would be that one, if no other. I can't say it strong enough how much I detest and deplore this action. So let's not blame just Greenock Town Council. They are all the councils up and down the land have taken part in this. And it has to be removed as soon as possible. Then there is the coming storm about the sex education in the primary schools and secondary schools. The SNP again have rubber stamped at Edinburgh, and they're bringing in transgender education into the schools, and it is mandatory. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, you cannot remove your child from the lesson. And we all must stand together on this particular issue and tell Sturgeon and company that this is completely and utterly unacceptable. Now, whether I'm elected or not will not stop me from campaigning against this. I will go on campaigning against this, and I will try and find others who agree with me. And I'm sure the vast majority of people in the town and in the area, once they understand what this is all about, they will be completely opposed to it. And anyone I have spoken to in the streets who know about it are completely opposed. And the people who don't know about it, that I explain what's going on, are absolutely horrified and shocked. And of course, they are opposed to it as well. I have not met one single person who thinks this is a good idea. So we have to, as a group of people of Inverclyde, we have to band together and tell the SNP and Sturgeon that we will not accept it. And we are not accepting it. Now, there's many ways we can go with this. It can be done from school to school, or it can be done in an organised fashion. But that's something that's going to have to wait until after the council elections. I've already put out feelers here and there, and there is support for a campaign. It would help, of course, if I were a member of the council. I could oppose it from the inside, because I am quite confident that the independents, and we have a number of independents standing, and we have a number of independents already on the council, who will probably, I should imagine, oppose this. And it has to be opposed. Mums and dads need to be aware of what's going to be put into their children's heads. And children will be distressed and upset and confused. This is already happening down in England, where they are ahead of us on this. It's happened down in England as councils are bringing it in. Suddenly, parents have become aware that their children are confused and upset and asking confusing questions because they are obviously distressed. This should be a huge campaign all over the country. It should be. Now, I don't want to say any more because I've gone on and on about this, and I'll continue to go on about it. If you doubt the validity of opposition, ask around yourself. I have yet to meet a single person who agrees with any of this. It's not just, ladies and gentlemen, it's not just little lessons about birds and bees. It's a malignant poison, for want of a better term. I only want to talk about a couple of more things and then I'll wrap it up because the weather is too good, and I'm sure those who are watching will be desperate to get out into the sun. But I want to bring your attention to one of our objectives. Of course, we can't do this at local level, but in the long term, it's best that you know what our strategies are and what our aims are. This is part 2, and it's to do with the BBC television and BBC radio. Now again, I'm always surprised at how few people know that the BBC has a huge operation in the USA. Huge operation. All funded, of course, by our money. Or, I shouldn't say our money, I don't pay the license because I don't have television coming into the house. But for anyone who's paying that £150 or so, you're funding a huge operation in the USA, and you should ask yourself, I thought it was the British Broadcasting Corporation. It was set up to be an informative, neutral voice inside our country for our society. But for years now, they have quietly built this huge operation in the USA. To me, that's unacceptable. And I'm quite confident that that's one of the many reasons why they changed the charter a few years back, to allow them to do this. So for me, there is only one answer, and the Pensioners Party has an answer, and I'll read it to you. The BBC television licence shall be entirely abolished. Entirely abolished. The corporation shall be removed from public ownership, along with the BBC's television production facilities here and abroad, and offered up for sale to the highest bidder or group of bidders. In other words, it shall become a private enterprise. However, BBC television must remain under the either wholly or in its parts the ownership of British nationals. Foreigners and dual citizens will not be allowed to bid in the sale of the corporation. In other words, we don't think it's right that somebody like Rupert Murdoch, who is either an Australian or now an American citizen, should be in control of the BBC or anyone like him. We think if you're broadcasting in this country, then you should be a citizen of this country. You should have a vested interest in the welfare of the country. The BBC's entire back catalogue shall, however, remain in public ownership and may be offered to interested parties for use under licence. In other words, all the material that has been made by the BBC with our money since its inception should be kept in public ownership. Because you will have noticed, I am sure it's so obvious these days, that ex-BBC programmes turn up on commercial television. And quite often, because of the high standard, the comedy shows, the incredibly successful comedy shows, for example, are to be seen everywhere. Along with period dramas, which are expensive to make, of course. Now, what arrangements BBC has with these private broadcasters, I have no idea. I don't know where they're loaned out or sold off. But either way, it shouldn't be happening. But again, that will have occurred because of the change that was made to the Royal Charter. About 20 odd years ago, they changed the Charter. Didn't tell us what was happening to the changes or what these changes were, but they were changed. And finally, all BBC radio outlets, including the World Service, shall, however, remain in public ownership and undergo a complete restructuring to ensure all aspects of public radio are fit for purpose in the 21st century. If you like listening to radio, commercial or BBC, and you have done for a few years, you will have noticed there has been a shifting of emphasis in the programming. Well, we think that needs to be kept under public scrutiny via the ownership. So BBC television as a television broadcaster would be separated from the radio entirely, and the broadcasting side would be sold off in an auction. And how BBC funded itself would be entirely up to them. There are many options these days, because a lot of people have to pay that license and they don't watch that much BBC, if at all. I know plenty of people who've got television coming into their house. They have to buy the license, and yet they're watching 90% Sky television. They really only bought it in for watching films or sports. And they don't at all watch BBC. So there's a lot of unfairness in there because public taste and choice has changed since the 40s and 50s and 60s. It's no longer the case that 15 million people in this country sit down at 7:30 to watch X or Y or Z programme. Those days are gone, never to be returned. And so BBC has to adapt itself, and we have to unburden ourselves from that taxation. At the same time, take ownership of that very valuable back catalogue that we all paid for. I stopped buying a license and stopped watching television when the Jimmy Savile scandal broke, when it was quite clear to all of us that the BBC had hidden what was going on inside their premises with that man. Such a betrayal of all the children and all the victims. And yet, a few people were scolded and fired. No one was prosecuted. Nothing was seriously done. It was business as usual. Half-baked apologies, simply, in my mind, were not good enough. But as you all know, we have an unsympathetic government at Westminster. We now have an unsympathetic government in Edinburgh. And we know that because of these changes in these sexual lessons that are going to be compulsory. These people don't care about us, our children, or our future. And all local councils do have a certain amount of authority on what they can do and what they cannot do. But we all have to stand together on that sexual abomination that's coming in. I don't know whether they'll manage to bring it in this autumn or the following year. They'll probably try and rush it through to get it in this autumn. And finally, there is a vague statement, not so vague I suppose, but it's an intention. It's not really a policy, it's an intention. The Pensioners Party shall establish in the UK a more inclusive and prominent role in local community life and in the national life of the UK for those pensioners who seek it. Now that's a kind of woolly, vague thing. But what we mean by that is too many people find themselves at work and they enjoy their work and off they go and everything seems okay, and then comes the day they retire or are forced to retire because of changing circumstances, and they find themselves at a loose end. But they want to be active, not necessarily in a job, but they want to be active somehow. But because most of their life has been given over to a job, they may not know where to go or who to speak to or what they are able to do. And they're at a loose end. Now I personally think that's a waste of an individual, because all of us have qualities and skills and desires and needs, and everyone has a value. So as I say, it sounds a bit woolly. I'll read the rest of it. The Pensioners' Party shall establish in the UK a more inclusive role for all forms of performance, art and transmitted media. And what we mean by that is simply cable television, terrestrial TV, terrestrial radio and internet radio, and printed media for pensioners who seek it. There are plenty of folk out there, pensioners, and when I say pensioners, always remember that some people are financially independent enough to take early retirement. There's a lot of people these days now retire at 55, men and women, because they've worked really hard and they've had good salaries and they've salted money away, and they want to enjoy the rest of their life while they've still got good health. And who can blame them? But they find often that there is a resistance in organisations to allow such people to come in and contribute. And we think that's not good for local communities, and it's certainly not good for the country. It's a waste of talent. All UK state retirement pensioners will receive, for all roles and positions in performance arts and transmitted media, like I say, a salary equal to and no less than agreed statutory payments. In other words, if you are a retired person and you, for example, are asked to take part in some kind of radio show or television show where payments involved, then there should be no reduction simply because you're a retired person. You should be getting paid the same money for the job or the service that you're providing as anyone else. And that's all that means. And lastly, and I think absolutely crucially, the official state retirement age throughout the UK will become 65 for men and 65 for women at the earliest time after gaining full control in a general election. In other words, when we come to power in the national sense, that's what we would do. It's now openly discussed that the retirement age is going up by another year. And there is lots of rumours of it continually going up. I personally don't think it'll ever stop. I really don't. They'll just keep moving it up because they really don't want you to live long enough to get the pension. And one of our long-term strategies is this, and I've never heard anyone ever mention this before except ourselves. If you contribute to the country through your national insurance and taxation, and you get to any age really, but let's assume that you get to the ages of, you're in your 50s now, and you're getting closer and closer to that retirement age, and then illness strikes, and then death. I don't think it's right that the government gets to keep all that money that you've paid in. I think people should get at least a percentage of that back. So, for example, if it was a man and a wife and the man dies, as they usually do, before the wife, that's the normal waive it according to the numbers, and say that couple are in their late 50s, I think that the widow should receive some percentage of her husband's input into his retirement pension that he will obviously no longer be able to collect. And vice versa. If the man is left a widower and his wife has not ever collected a retirement pension because she never lived that long, then why should all that money be lost to the government? After all, it's supposed to be put aside for that woman's pension. So surely you would think that the widower should be entitled to at least a percentage of it, if not all of it. Again, that's an aspiration. And that's all it can be at this point. Now, the actual campaign time will be starting in a little over a week. Beginning of April, Friday in fact. So you will see me about in the town. I'll have some kind of badge on that you'll realise that I'm a candidate in the election, and if you see me in the town and you wish to come and speak to me, please do. Don't hang back, don't be shy or embarrassed. If you've got questions, I'll do my best to answer them for you. And as I say, because we are a small but growing party, you may not get a flyer through your door because we don't have endless funds to draw on. And so with that, I'm going to wrap up today's live stream and let you get back to the good weather outside, and I'll get outside myself and enjoy the weather. But I will be back next Sunday again, and I hope to see you all again. So for the moment, I shall say adios, au revoir, cheerio, and until next Sunday afternoon at 2 o'clock. I nearly forgot the time there. I'll speak to you then, folks. So enjoy the song, and I'll see you hopefully next week. So take care everyone, go and enjoy the weather, and I'll speak to you soon.
Beneath her banner different ways. We will toast to long lost friendships as we build our better days. In the glens and cities, there on every street are the living heroes no army will defeat. Let our flag mean freedom and not a battle drum. We are all the heroes of Scotland. We're a nation hand in hand. We will march beneath her banners to protect our ancient land. In the glens and cities, there on every street are the living heroes no army will defeat. Let our flag mean freedom and not a battle